Good morning.
Hey, how you doing, Paul?
They're in the,
You guys got all the decent hour last night?
I mean, I looked at my watch and it was like 8:15. I'm like, I didn't show up at 27. My wife dropped a hot dog off the field, so I had to go.
22nd rule.
I
Pick it up.
went through the whole thing, including eating hot dogs off the Miller field my entire life. And it's nothing worse.
In a prominent
She just
place.
opens. That's how that went down.
Wow.
Yeah, I got it.
I'd be excused to go get my hearing aid.
I did like the mozzarella cheese.
Me too.
Gave it a little more texture. Well,
It's bad I don't hear what most people say. You think I listen? Don't need to respond.
I end up keeping everything.
Craig, you went with the monster burger.
Oh, I did.
There you go. Oh, yeah.
Okay, this is a regular meeting and public hearing being held as town commission
Sure.
of the town of Gulfstream on Friday, February the 11th, 2022 at 9 a.m. in the William F. Cope Jr. Commission Chambers of the Town Hall, 100 C Road, Gulfstream, Florida.
Let's call the meeting to order first. Please rise and pledge the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Lyons,
Here.
Vice Mayor Stanley.
Here.
Commissioner White,
Here.
Commissioner Orthwyne, Mayor Morgan.
Here.
And also present are Town Manager Dunham and Town Attorney Trey. That's Trey Nazaro. And Police Chief Allen and myself.
Very good. Thank you. We've been presented with our minutes from the last regular meeting, January 14th. Are there any comments, corrections, additions? Now, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes from the last commission meeting.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stanley.
Yes.
Commissioner White.
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwyne.
Yes.
Mayor Morgan.
Yes. I think we have a change to the agenda, Mr. Dunham.
Yes, Mayor, under the manager's comments, we're going to remove number 5, which is review of special exceptions.
Okay, remove section A5 under 9. Our next meeting will be March 11th at 9 a.m. for anyone who wishes to attend. Any comments from the public? If not, let's move on then to the public hearing. We're going to be hearing the application on 588 Banyan Road. Any ex parte communications?
I have ex parte communication with the applicant.
So did I. Applicant called me after our December meeting. Spoke to him briefly, and then we had a text between us. And
I spoke to the applicant too after the meeting.
Okay, very good.
Mr. Mayor, before they come up to make their presentation, can I just point out the change that I'd spoken to you about?
Yes, please.
So in your packet, on the first page of the packet that they have, where they have the site calculations, where you see the pervious versus impervious, it shows a total of 25,000 square feet of pervious property, and that's 82%, and 5,400 square feet of impervious. As it turns out, the 5,400 square feet is the footprint of the house, and it doesn't include the
Hardscape.
hardscape, the pool, the deck, and the driveways. And so this is what I've sent out to you. The revised numbers would leave that with 18,000 square feet of pervious, which is 59%, and then 12,533 square feet of impervious. And those meet our codes.
Very good. Thank you for the correction. Anyone who's going to speak today on the application, please rise and be sworn.
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yep.
Very good. Mr. Schreier?
Good morning.
Morning.
At the last meeting, we were asked to go back to the APA for the design review. And once again, we went back with the concerns that were brought by this commission regarding mass and the need to meet the 4 criteria for the special exception. And we demonstrated to the design review commission that we do meet those now. We've made some modifications, and I'll be happy to go through them with you this morning. And I always forget how to make this go forward. Oh, okay. Oh, yes, excuse me. I forgot Mr. Davis is going to go first. Please.
Good morning. Just quickly before he presents, I just wanted to say we appreciate your time here today and look forward to addressing the questions and concerns expressed at the December commission meeting. Since that meeting, we've been busy. We've been calling and speaking to many of you, meeting and collaborating with the town staff, reaching out to the Cove neighbors and Bill Boardman with elevations, seeking any feedback, pulling the application to make several modifications to the structure and landscaping, and ultimately receiving overwhelming support from the direct Cove and other core neighbors, resulting in unanimous approval from the ARPB last week. Though some may view the modifications modestly, I'd tell you that they're meaningful to us and that significant time, energy, and resources have been expended by many people since December 10th to provide the solution here today. You should have received and hopefully internalized our prior correspondence to the town, ARPB, an exhibit of numerous support letters, so I'm not going to repeat them here. But I would say before Benjamin presents, there are just 4 points. One, this is a very large and unusual lot. It's a significant lot. It's the largest core point lot in the neighborhood and is worthy of a proportionate and therefore significant home. To be clear, we don't want a mansion, and this is not a spec home, but it is our year-round primary residence. We have a large family, and while others are certainly free to provide their subjective opinions regarding their occasional viewing pleasures, this is the house that we live in year-round, every day, hopefully for a very long time, which basically needs to be this size. A size and height that, by the way, is not out of line with other similar point lot homes. Point 2, our home conforms to Gulfstream's code, rules, regulations, FARs, etc., by all objective measures. 3, our home meets the criteria explicitly available in the code to waterfront new construction for special exception, as Benjamin will explain. We'd note that while it's a significant lot, it also bears 2 significant banyan trees that protrude over 40 feet into the lot from the north and must be planned around. Regardless, even with the special exception, will be even 5 feet further back from the existing home's current southern boundary and twice as far back as our friends across the canal to the south. Point 4, the direct cove neighbors across all key elevations, north, east, and south, and many others throughout the neighborhood have expressed their broad-based, overwhelming, and evident support. These are the homeowners that have invested millions in their cove properties and will daily experience views of our property in the future. And while everybody has a voice and deserves to be heard, these voices should ring loudest in their overwhelming written support. To conclude, we've lived here in Gulfstream for over 15 years. We love the town. We've had multiple children attend Gulfstream School and successfully, and we believe tastefully renovated several other homes in Gulfstream that we think have added value to the neighborhood. Here we've endeavored to be thoughtful in balancing each of situating the homes so as to create the least impactful view to others, while also creating sufficient buffer for the 2 large banyan trees in the front, while also crafting the primary residence or family needs and that complies with the code. We believe the home accomplishes these goals. To bring it forward, we now live in an overpriced rental on Hypoluxo Island that we unnecessarily rushed to move into over the holidays at an inopportune time for my wife. With any new house, you're effectively delayed until May. I suppose the only silver line is that our builder tells us that a May start would allow for the outside structure to be complete by December and next season, which I think is good for everybody, but it's time to get going. As such, we respectfully ask for your approval for a home that many describe as beautiful, which objectively meets the code, enhances the neighborhood, which the direct neighbors across all key elevations overwhelmingly support. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schreier?
Thank you, Mr. Davis. This is a slide showing the proposed location of the house. There were some images of the existing house, the gate to the house. What I'm trying to get to here is, excuse me, the sheet A0.4 in your package shows a comparison of other point lots in the neighborhood. This is 8 point lots, of which the house that's being proposed on at the end of Banyan Road there are 4 houses which have greater square footage than this house and 4 houses that have less. And then some have as much as 500 square feet more, yet this is the largest lot of the group. Of these houses, in terms of lot coverage, again, we are less than most of these houses in terms of lot coverage, the comparative lots. In addition, many of these houses reached the peak allowable 30 feet in height, and one of the comments was to reduce the mass of the house. And in addition to the mass, as a result of reducing the mass, which I'll get to in greater detail later, the overall height of the house has been lowered by 2 feet, so it's only about 28 feet tall at its highest point. So we are now lower than most of the houses along the point, on point lots. Regarding the special exceptions, there's 4 items that we have to address to be granted the special exception. The first on sheet A 0.6 is the reduced setback will not substantially alter the character of the waterfront in the immediate vicinity, including any other properties facing onto the same cove or stretch of waterway. Then in blue, our response is the proposed home is 5 feet farther away from the cove than the existing home. The project has been reviewed by neighbors, of which 14 have written letters supporting the design. And I want to note that the proposed house, as I said, is 5 feet further away from the cove than it is currently. The house directly across the cove is incredibly close to the cove. I'd say as close as 15 feet to their property line. So, and we're at 30 feet back. The next item is reduction of the risk setback is necessary to ensure adequate buildable area. This house sits at the end of Banyan Road. Banyan Road remarkably only has 4 banyan trees. The 2 most significant banyan trees sit on the Davis property and are the termination and the view at the end of the end of Banyan Road as you approach the property. The 2 banyan trees sit 9 feet in from the edge of their property, and their canopies extend to 50 feet in from the canopy. The front setback required is 30 feet. We want to protect these banyan trees to give an something that I believe is a real contributing factor to this portion of Gulf Stream. So in order to do that, we have to position the house farther away from them to ensure the longevity of those trees. Hence, I believe we've qualified for that portion.
Well,
And
the
I-
town protects trees.
Pardon?
The town protects trees on the streetscape.
These are on their own property. These aren't
No, I
on town
understand
property.
that. But we typically do not allow trees to be removed, particularly of that size and nature, from the front of homes.
And there's
So
no,
it's the size of your house that's necessitating the rear setback exception, correct? That is, according to section 775 J2B, which you've just read, the reduction of the rear setback must be necessary to ensure adequate building area. How is it necessary to ensure that buildable area when you would have to apply to remove those trees if you were going to move your house forward toward the street?
the canopies of those trees and the root balls that are underneath them extend over 50 feet into the property in order to have a proper arrival for a house of
the size that you have drawn.
to have proper arrival to the home, not necessarily the size, but to have proper arrival to the home and a nice motor court, which is something that is appropriate for a design at this location. It has resulted in pushing that wing of the house farther to the south. So we're protecting the trees, having a proper sense of arrival. Therefore, we're asking for the special exception.
I understand. Go ahead.
A 0 point. There we go. The next item is that the reduced setback allows for more attractive architectural design and more practical home layout. The reduced setback allows for a more attractive architectural design and practical home layout by placing a one-story portion in the special exception area and allowing a master suite with light and air on 3 sides, taking advantage of views to the intercoastal, inlet, and cove. This is a unique lot with a unique opportunity to take a significant room to have views towards water on 3 sides, which are definitely one of the large values of this unique location. Therefore, in order to get that view from the master suite, that's why we're in that portion of the property. And the last portion of the special exception, any portion of the structure within 50 feet of the waterway bulkhead shall not exceed 1 story with a maximum height of 20 feet, except for lots less than 120 feet in depth. The setback for 2-story portion shall be no less than 33% of the lot depth. And this is where we're going to go back to the south setback for the 2-story portion exceeds the 50 feet required setback by 1'7". The 1-story portion beats the 30-foot required setback. This next sheet addresses the issue of the impervious area of the lot, and we're required to have 40% impervious, and we have nearly 60%. We have 59%. The design has 59%. Now we are going to these are showing before and after with the landscaping. This first sheet is showing from the north. We were asked to bring elevations that look directly at the house from each ordinate, north, south, east, and west. The next one, sheet A4.1, shows it from the east. The previously proposed on the top and the currently proposed is on the bottom. The next sheet, A4.2, is the south elevation. Here on A4.3, the next one, this is as viewed from the intercoastal waterway. And this one we begin to see what we'll see next when we remove the landscaping, which is how the house has been reduced. The house previously had a 9-on-12 roof slope. We've reduced the roof slope in portions from 9-on-12 to 6-on-12 and 5-on-12. This has resulted in, as I said previously, the height of the peak of the roof being reduced by 2 feet and the lower portions of the house being reduced by 3 feet. More importantly, we were asked to consider the issue of mass of the home. And I want to just give an example here. If you had, let's say, a 3,000 square foot rectangular house that had a 9-foot ceiling all the way around, or let's say a 15-foot ceiling all around, the square footage of the house could remain the same, but the mass of the house could be significantly reduced if we went from, let's say, a 13-foot height to a 10-foot height. So by reducing the pitch on the roof, what we've successfully done is reduce the mass by 13% on this house. And we hope that we believe that has addressed the issue of mass so that this house doesn't have as domineering of a roofscape, and therefore it has been reduced. And this slide here above at the top, you can see on the left-hand portion, there we go. The pointer doesn't show up on the white, but I'm going to go over to the image here. Oh, I'll get the whole image back. Thank you. By lowering the roof height, we've been able to take the peaks here, and we've been able to make them proportionately lower on the houses so that the overall mass is reduced. And you see this here on the next elevation. Oh, I want to point out, we were also requested to give some articulation to the facade here that faces the cove directly to the east. This is showing the last two submissions. Previously, this whole elevation was flat. We added a dormer. We added a Dutch gable and a modest one at that location. Also, to reduce the mass, the chimneys have been lowered by 6 feet at the rear, facing the intercoastal waterway. Here you can see the chimneys reduced again, as well as the roofs that have been reduced. And then we have perspectives, again, showing the exterior of the house. And some more perspectives before and after. And then it goes into the civil drawings. And that concludes the presentation. Yeah.
When you reduce all that, does it take away from the architectural style that you originally dealt with?
We would not have brought it here if we didn't think it still was consistent with the architectural style of the home.
Just curious.
But I'd like to say that I appreciate the reduction in the pitch, because it certainly makes a difference in the appearance of certain viewpoints of the house. And I also appreciate the letters that you collected, Mr. Davis, from your neighbors, because we talked about that, and you did a remarkable job of putting together that packet. That being said, I'd like to go through the timeline of what happened here. In our December meeting, you'll recall that the commission gave direction, and the direction was, and I don't believe there was any dissenting voice on it, the consensus was that the special exception was inappropriate for this house, that the square footage was too large and led to a massing effect. Was there any misunderstanding on your part, Mr. Schreier, on what we were saying at that meeting?
It was understood that we had to come back and explain why we were requesting the special exception.
Well, no, that was at that meeting. You remember I asked you,
right,
what was the reason for your special exception? So your opportunity was then, but you've made it now as well. However, I pointed to the section upon which the commission indicated that the special exception was inappropriate for the change in the rear setback. We also made the comment that the square footage, Mr. Lyons said, whether it's size, square footage, or mass, they're the same thing. And we indicated that the size, the square footage, should be reduced. And so thereafter, within a week or two, I believe you met with our town attorney and town manager to review and get direction on the application process. And you'll recall that Mr. Nazaro told you that to proceed, you should eliminate the special exception and reduce the square footage of the building, in addition to improving the landscaping on the east side. Is that correct?
My understanding was different from that meeting with town staff. We focused in specifically on being able to address the 4 items of the special exception, as well as not so much square footage as much as mass. Mass seemed to be the critical point, and that's why I brought up the example of the typical, let's say, a 3,000 square foot home. Mass, and I specifically asked town staff in those meetings, it seems that mass is one of the critical items that's being addressed here. And that's why we have focused on the mass. When the Davises purchased the property from the town, the little piece that was added to their property, it was specifically, and Mr. Davis can probably clarify this better than I can, when the town gave them permission to potentially one day, if it were ever to be redeveloped, they specifically pointed out that they didn't want to take any of the rights away of the amount of house that could be built. A condition might have been placed on that sale at the time. A condition was not placed on that. Therefore, although it was discussed, and they are now specifically asking a number of years later to design a home that is within that allowable amount that had been discussed at that time. Regarding the special exception, we took a deep look back at the process by which we designed the house. And we're trying to figure out, and looking at it, we realized that the reason why that house is needing the special exception is because of those banyan trees. Those banyan trees, which are, the first time I arrived at the site, are glorious, they're wonderful, and they're something that should have their best chance to thrive. By placing the house far away from it during construction, reducing the impact on the root balls and stuff so that they thrive, that's the reason why. In combination with the ability for a unique lot with waterfront on 3 sides to be able to have a significant room, take advantage of that. And the special exception, when I read it, is the idea is it gives an opportunity for a homeowner to do something. So the combination of the trees with the opportunity for the design is why we were asking for it.
I understand, but the special exception requires that the setback change be necessary for an adequate building area. I'm reading directly from it, an adequate building area. You've got plenty of building area. You could relocate that house and you could make that house smaller and you wouldn't have any issue with the banyan trees. The banyan trees are something that we would protect. I doubt very much that if you applied to remove those trees so that you could move your house further toward the street, that it would be granted. So I don't accept that argument at all. But let's take what you've said as accurate, and I think there is some difference in recollection between staff and what you represented at that having occurred at that meeting after our December commission meeting. The next step, after you met with town staff, was about a month later, you came to the Architectural Review and Planning Board as we directed with your application. You didn't change the setback, you didn't change the square footage size of the house, and you didn't change the massing. In fact, you didn't change anything with respect to that application. Why?
We did change the massing when we appeared before the APRB the second time. We had reduced.
I'm talking about the first time. When you came, that was a special meeting that Chairman Smith allowed. Excuse me. Normally, they would have just rejected your application, and that would have been the end of it, because you came with the identical application that you brought to this commission.
Excuse me.
Indicated should not be approved. So why did you do that?
We were directed to see what we could do in terms of, because there was a discussion about that the house should be evaluated relative to its landscaping. And at that first meeting, it was chosen to address it by landscaping. Then the APRB said, we understand you've changed the landscaping, but we're looking for something regarding the house itself. And that's why we returned for that special meeting. Yes.
So you thought that when the commission sent your application back to the ARPB, it was just for landscaping? Is that what you took from our meeting in December?
That's what I had discussions with our client, and we were directed to do that course.
Mayor, can I?
Yes, please.
Before Mr. Davis, you referenced a comment I made in the December meeting,
Mhm.
and on reflection, it was a careless remark. And I should have known better because we've looked at the subject of massing in terms of roof height, elevations, et cetera, et cetera. So for me to have said it, I was trying to understand what we were trying to communicate to the applicant at that time. And I think I said something like, well, size, massing. I mean, really, are we saying make the house small? And I was trying to get to an answer for more guidance. But I do think by the changes they've made without changing the square footage, that the appearance of the house is not as large, is not as massive, in my opinion. So I would want to make that correction. I have some thoughts on the special exception too. I don't know whether I bring them up now.
Please.
I have to say, as it relates to the special exception, I looked at that issue in the first meeting, frankly, in a way to try to see if we couldn't figure out a solution so the applicant could proceed with the construction of their house. Would they be willing to give up that special setback? You clearly weren't. And so I went back to the manual and studied it further. And the manual's clear. And I also always, I say stress, always listen to the feedback from the ARPB with the meetings. And, you know, the comment was made on this layout. It's a nice layout. It's symmetrical for the property. The master suite would like, you know, a view towards the intercoastal. And so reduced setback allows for more practical layout. And I think this is a practical layout. A separate issue is, you know, they need that much square footage. That's a separate issue. You know, in my mind, for the size lot, that square footage is adequate. So I think, and again, it's my judgment, my interpretation. And I'm glad we have this deliberate process. So we consider all points of view. But I think this special exception, yeah, could you push it back? Sure. But I just think in the context of when we've allowed special exceptions, you know, I like this layout. It was my home. I like the layout. No, we wouldn't let the banyan trees be taken down. I mean, I know I would. I mean, those are so prominent. So I'm okay with the special exception, but I'm only one of 5. So
That's what why we're a commission. We're not, it's not a single member commission. Anybody else want to comment?
I think when I first looked at the plans, first time it came, I thought it was a house. I thought this looks like a house in the Ocean District because of the size of it and the mass. And every district has its own characteristics. And the core, or, you know, the difference between the proportions in the core and the proportions on the ocean. I do think with the changes that you've made, that the mass has been reduced. It's personally, I think it's a more attractive house this way. I think the other had a lofty feeling to it that quite didn't fit in the core to me. And the higher chimneys, lowering the chimneys, I think was significant too. If, you know, have that Gothic cathedral effect with everything going up. So by lowering everything, I think I think it's still an exceptional house. It's a singular house and very pretty, but I think it's I think the massing has been reduced.
Mayor, I had actually some written comments. I don't know when you want me to make them, but the others should go.
Let's have any other.
Do you know what I had asked when Mr. Davis and I talked, I had asked about what other houses on Polo Drive had the same massing as this one, the square footage, and maybe for visual effect, you could tell us which ones they were. You had a thing up there, just so we have a more visual effect of what we're dealing with. Because this is much bigger than the houses on Banyan on the code, but in general, what other houses have this kind of massing? And the only other thing I have to say is the special exception. I still don't like it, but if I had to choose between the Banyan and the special exception, I choose the Banyan, but I don't think we have to choose. I mean, I still don't think we have to choose. But what other houses around us are the same square footage?
Sure,
Similar, unsimilar in nature?
sure. We're going to start off at the northernmost one where there's a box by it on this sheet, A0.4, 570 right way. That house has well, let's first open up the house that we're designing, that has been designed here is 8,700 gross square feet.
Okay,
The house on right way is 8,626 square feet.
okay, that was designed when we had absolutely no rules.
I built that.
And
Oh, no, not that one. It's the one at the end, isn't
Which
it?
one did you?
The one on the golf course.
Which one?
Which one?
The point right way.
Talking
Oh,
about the
the
end of
point
yeah,
one.
school. Yeah.
How many
It looks
square
nothing
feet is
like
that?
this house.
that is
It's a big
8,626
house,
square
but it
feet.
does not have that appearance,
Okay,
but it was done way before.
okay. I
these
thought he was
changes.
talking about the one on
Yeah,
the
this
end.
goes back to the.
The next-
90s. That's when we-
The next house at the northwest corner of Banyan Road and the Intracoastal 555 Banyan Road has 8,972 square feet, which is 272 square feet more than the house that's being proposed.
Is that Souders?
Yes,
Immediately across the cove at 582 Palm Way, that house has 6,600 square feet on a lot that is about roughly 2/3 the size of the lot that the
right.
Davises own. So proportionately, for its lot size, it's actually bigger. The next one to the south, 554 Palm Way, has 9,411 square feet.
That is the other one you developed at the end of my street on the left. Okay. And the Souders house is 250 square feet bigger? Is that what you said?
I don't know by address. And then
Oh, okay.
owners I know by address.
It's the one at the other side of Banyan on the point.
At 555 Banyan on the
Yeah,
northeast
that's it.
corner. That one is 8,972 square
Okay.
feet.
So I'm
Again,
just,
also larger.
for a visual effect, that's all I'm trying to get at. To compare what we're dealing with.
Yeah, no, well, we're on that subject, and I'm going to address it later on, but maybe I should do it now. If you don't mind, I'm going to stand up. Because there's been discussion about the core district and the small understated, I don't know what's this small, but understated houses. You know, I'm someplace down here on Polo. This interior card is really sort of almost what dominates the perspective when people come through this town. It's the main road that people come in and out. And they're small lots. My lot is small. It's probably 15,000 square feet. And so when we've been talking about the size of this house, in my mind, I separate those two issues just as a perspective, and I'll add more, but that's a very good visual of the difference in scale, size, and also visibility. The three sides of the Davis lot are not visual to most people in the community.
Is it part of the core district?
It is.
Yes,
Is the core district defined as single-family homes and partial second-story homes? I think you read it at the last commission meeting when we handled this case.
actually, it's defined as single family.
Single-story with partial two
Single and partial.
a few partial two stories, I think is how you read it.
But again, you know, well, I'll reference something else. I mean, you look at the history, we reference history in the manual. And I know that I struggled with this particular application more so than anyone I've ever looked at in 10 years. And so I wanted to get it right based on my interpretation, again, mine. Early on in the history section of the design manual, it says by 1930, town was firmly established as a winter resort for the wealthy. Although early houses were typically mansions, today the town is extensively subdivided with fewer larger mansions and more moderate sized distinguished homes. Yeah, we do have districts, and it's really going to be one of the key points that, in terms of my perspective, when I looked at the manual, the typical lot size in the core district, again, on Polo, between Polo and Gulfstream, it's around 15, 16,000 square feet. This is 30,000 square feet. Ocean West, the beachfront, 20 to 40,000. This is out of Peninsula. It's an outlier. And so when I looked at the overall size of the house, really cutting the chase, I felt for this particular property, and there's only one other, the entire town of Gulfstream, that would have 3 elevations exposures, and it's in a code. And when I was chatting with our town attorney, I didn't want to in any way diminish my perspective on this house as it relates to the bigger issue for the core district, which we're going to discuss at another time. But I think it's such an outlier. And the fact that there are very few people who will ever see that, I don't know if that's an excuse, but the reality is that most people going through the town of Gulfstream are going to go up Polo Drive, Gulfstream Drive. And I can tell you, if you built a house that was 5,000 square feet on my lot, it would absolutely, a 2-story would change the streetscape dramatically. And if you did that throughout the entire street of Polo and Gulfstream. So I have a concern there, but that's not the subject today. It's subject to this application. And I think at the end of the day, it's appropriate for the reasons I just cited, and that's a point of view. And I know others disagree, and I absolutely respect that. And this is where I ended up.
Very good.
I believe in our architecture review boards. I mean, I really think we worked hard years ago to prevent mansionization. And I think we've accomplished it. We've been doing this for how many years, Rita? 35 years? We did that code. I mean, what was coming into this town was horrible at that time. I mean, not horrible, but it was 0 lot lines, 5. And we've really, I think, accomplished what we set out to do years ago. That being said, I just want to point out that there are other houses that might be even bigger that we don't realize are bigger. This is just new construction. And if it's properly landscaped, it will probably be not so offensive when it's done. I don't see it being like an eyesore. But I think the key is landscaping and keeping it lower. And I still don't like the special exception. And I told you that. But given all that, I believe in our architecture review board and our architectural review standards. And I think they've held with us. And whether you want to disagree with this situation, I just believe in what we've done in the past. And I think they've been good for the community. Obviously, you can't buy a house here. And when you can find one, it's over what they're asking for it. So I think we've grown this town into a beautiful town, and I think it's going to continue to grow. I don't think we can go back to 1950 or the polo fields or the 1-story cottages that were built in 1950. I mean, we have to move forward in a respectful style. That's all I have to say.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I'll weigh in here. So in speaking with the applicant after the meeting on the ex parte communication, I think I probably said a lot of the same stuff that Commissioner Orthwein said. You know, the purpose of the chart that's up here is we all know they were built at different times, some pre-code, some during certain versions of the code, was, you know, demonstrate what's on the other point lots, so everybody has a point of view for the record. And also that just gives you the walk-by test, codes notwithstanding. What does this house look like in comparison to what we're building? You know, as a layperson, you know, some of them may be a little bigger. I don't think any of them are from the chart, right, or above 9,000 square feet. Is there one that's 10?
One's above 9,000, one's 9,411.
Yeah, the rest of them are, you know, they're all below 10,000, and a 10,000 square foot house is not what we're seeking here. It's the purpose of the code. You know, also to, you have to sort of dig in. This is what we want, and you have to tell us why you want it, and you've got to go through the different machinations to see, you know, what the feedback is from the community and staff. You know, again, I used to do a lot of this earlier in my professional practice. I've sort of gotten out of it for many of these reasons, but you know, in my opinion, I was coming back. You know, and again, everybody's entitled to do what they want under the code and file an application. I probably would have removed the special exception. You know, I understand the mayor's point. The banyan trees were never moving. You know, they're protected. Obviously, they're mature trees. I've never had a problem with the arrival to the home with both the old roof pitch and the new roof pitch. I think that's one of the unique benefits of this lot. You drive around Banyan, you know, it's there. You're not going to see the, you know, the house has got a pretty good arrival with the new circular drive. You know, it has a pretty good one now with the existing home. I did note that you took one of my comments with regard to the master wing and added a little fenestration on the east elevation, which I appreciate, because it looked a little plain. So we were going through the slides about 20 minutes ago just to prove to everybody I was awake. But again, you know, I'm okay with the square footage. I do have a concern, which is, you know, probably not going to go anywhere, that Commissioner Orthwein brought up. We were having mental telepathy this morning, I think. Is when we get involved with adjusting these roof pitches, I sometimes have the opposite problem, that there's not enough pitch, or there's not enough visual of the roof. And I know architecturally, you know, we've asked you to do different things for the massing. We probably don't want to go in reverse, but we do have some other homes where I think the roof pitch doesn't have a good view from the street, regardless of how high it is. Again, the neighbors of some of those homes during construction will probably not be that happy with that comment, but you can go the other way. So, you know, at this point, I would say I'm not that happy with the special exception. You know, variances are never granted, which is slightly different in this town for new construction. You know, the typical idea for the special exception, in my opinion, under the code is, you know, you're more for an addition. You know, you've got a house that's encroaches in an existing setback and you want to add on to it, and you can't under the FAR. So you get a special exception to continue the house in violation of the current setback, and you extend it back. That's typically how we've applied it. You know, everything about the house is wonderful. It's got it's got great architectural detail. I mean, the landscaping is phenomenal, plus the upgrades. Again, I'm not super excited about lowering the roof pitches because sometimes that can have a negative effect. But I think with this type of design, because it's not a fenestration, it's actually a Cape Dutch gable. Because of the gables, I think that's going to be less of a problem if it even is one. But so I'm just down to the special exception. You know, the applicant may think that we're dancing on the head of a pin, but you know, you've got a lot of neighbors involved. You've had the ARPB brought in twice. You know, before the commission, the staff has spent numerous hours on this. Mr. Schreier spent numerous hours on this. Again, I'm not going to debate the timeline of who said what. I think we all can agree we're down to kind of the finer points. So that's sort of my opinion on the whole thing.
I agree with Commissioner Lyons. This has been the most difficult home application that I've had in the years that I served on the ARPB and on the commission. It's with long-term residents, a reputable architect, beautiful home. But as the vice mayor said, the special exception is something that I can't get around. It's not justified in this application. And the other thing that bothered me, and you can tell we've had 5 meetings on this application. It's obviously been taken very seriously. But I must say it bothered me immensely that after the comments given by the commissioners at our December meeting, we did not reject your application as we could have. We sent it back with guidance, not even instructions. It was more consensual guidance, because that's how we would work. When Mr. Davis called me, I thought perhaps we would sit down and, kind of work things out, because that's how we want to accomplish things in this town. And it didn't. Instead, you just brought it right back exactly the same way it was brought to us the first time. And that has bothered me. I cannot get over the special exception. I think you should have removed that, taken some square footage out of the house as a result of it. You would have had a gorgeous home. You take a few square feet out of every room, you reduce one large room somewhat, you'd never notice the difference. And you would have satisfied, in my opinion, the neighborhood district characterization that we are trying to achieve. Yes, there are other large homes that probably would be getting the same treatment you're getting right now if they were brought now. And that's something the town has to live with. We've had our code, we've modified our code over time. We've made a number of changes in just the last few years to try to control the excessively large homes that are coming into our town, particularly as families come in and want to spend more time here. They want larger homes for their children and for the time that they're going to spend here. And that's the balancing act that we have to take. But we must preserve this neighborhood characteristic as defined in our code to preserve the values, property values, and the living value in this town. And so perhaps I'm rambling a little bit, and I apologize for that, but I think where I'm coming from. It's a beautiful home. Should have been smaller. But I think we'll take a vote and we'll see where it ends up. Yes, sir, Mr. Davis.
Maybe just two quick comments. And again, I apologize for not being at the December meeting, so that's on me, some bad advice. But I guess 2 things. One, on the special exception, I do think there was confusion both at that meeting amongst some of the commissioners as well as at the subsequent ARPB meeting, and as to whether or not the special exception applied to new construction versus a renovation or an annex, or whether there was a separate part in the code that allowed for new construction on the water if you meet the 4 criteria. And so I think there was actually some confusion around it. And as we worked and talked with the town staff, I did not hear it all remove the special exception. What we heard was there's 4 prongs to it. We actually can meet those prongs for waterfront new construction, and to come back and clarify why that was the case. So that was, just so you know, what I heard at our subsequent meetings with the town, that it was more about clarification against those four prongs. The other thing I'll say is I didn't really want to get into this, but you asked about why didn't anything change and this question of square footage. And I did go back, for what it's worth, to the November 2020 meeting where we purchased the abandonment from the town. And I think everybody very consciously spoke about, hey, this will provide 2 benefits to this property: an incremental 500 square feet of buildable home, and it'll also allow for a centering of the home on the property. And at that point in time, I said, again, we don't have any plans at that point in time to build a new house, but I wouldn't want to be insincere because it was something that we've talked about. But that personally cared more about being able to center a house on the property than the incremental square footage. I think the commission discussed the scenario of selling the house at a deeper discount, but not providing the incremental benefits and square footage and centering the property, and said, no, that's going to be messy. let's charge basically the full rate with the full allowances provided to the property. And so it's very consciously decided to charge even more than we paid per square foot for the balance of our property, but very intentionally accompanying these additional benefits in 500 square feet. So then we go and spend many, many months building a home according to those allowances, that would take, we all talking here and think a special exception or, just lop off some square footage here. What is easy? It's not. As you all know, it takes a lot of time to go back and readjust things, shrink the entire house. A room's a room. We have a room for each of our kids and ourselves. And so we thought we heard these are the rules per se, or the allowances per se, that we also paid money for, went away and developed a house with a certain footprint and square footage after many months in collaboration. And then to come back and hear, well, is it mass? Is it square footage? What is it? I think we've tried to distill out that it is mass, and that the square footage was very intentionally, implicitly allowed and agreed upon when we got charged $350,000 for our driveway. So that's why we tried to keep the square footage the same, reduce the gables, but not eliminate them. In my discussion with Commissioner Stanley, he thought they actually added a lot to the house, and address mass without lopping off rooms or square footage. And again, as it relates to the special exception, I think we do meet the 4 criteria. Again, this house is 5 feet further back from that canal going into the cove than the existing structure. Our friends, the Arscotts to the south, are 16 feet. We're talking about a house that's still, even with the special exception, 32 feet back, from that inlet, going into the cove. So we would respectfully just ask you to reconsider that. I just want to make sure, Mayor Morgan, that I addressed your very good question about why didn't you change things, and the question about the square footage and what our instruction and what we heard from the town staff was. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. And please don't take anything anybody says here personally. I don't think you do. I don't really know you that well, but it's my comments here are never personal. We're just, we're volunteers here trying to do the best we can under the code that we have and preserving our image of what Gulfstream is.
I have just one comment. I know I asked you before, are you taking away from the architectural style of this house when you lower all, because I agree with Mr. Stanley, that's that we've made people, or there's pitches on houses and they're not that attractive. And it's new construction, some of it, and I just want to make sure you really believe in what you did.
I'll share some of the process with you if you want to hear.
Well, quickly.
When we do a Cape Dutch home, we go to source books.
Okay.
Where we have proportion and the mathematical relationships outlined in them. And we've used those in doing it. It works.
Okay.
The math works in the tall version, and the math works in the small part, in the slower version.
And also the special exception. I know I'm a big one on the special exception, and I was not pro new homes having them. Does it meet in our code, the other part? Do you agree with that, Trey?
As far as applying the special exception to new construction,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's nothing in this section of the code that says that it's limited to remodels.
So it meets all what they're saying.
It's still up to you to determine whether or not those prongs are met, but it is eligible to apply.
Oh yeah, I know it's eligible, but do you think it's met all the conditions?
Well, that's a question for the board to decide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you go back to the layout of the house and show us what, if you cut off that part of the house that is too far in, how far back do you have to go? What happens to the layout position of the room on the cove section?
Sure. In the lower right-hand portion is the master suite. I think if you can make out the plan from that distance, you can see there's a bed against the bed wall that's on the north side of the room. There's windows to the south, the east, and to the west. a very special room with light coming in from 3 sides with views to water in 3 directions. If we go back, the addition to the setback, which is actually 50 feet, that whole room disappears completely.
The whole room disappears?
The entire room?
If one were to meet if one were literally just to take a buzz saw and cut it
Yeah.
off,
The master, where the
the master bedroom is about
Master
18
bedroom
feet
for the
deep
bedrooms.
in the north-south direction.
It's the front room, not the whole section.
on the south,
Where the master bedroom is?
right? It goes up into the middle of the bed.
Oh,
Channels
okay.
onto it.
So that would be about how many feet?
18 feet away.
18 feet. Okay.
You obviously can't move that whole thing back proportionally, right?
You would lose the symmetry on the front. I really want to emphasize that from the street, as one goes on the end of Banyan Road, it's 2 one-story wings with a partial second floor part, which is what, is part of the definition of the core district. And that sense for someone who's taking a walk down the street, that really is in the spirit of it, we believe.
What are the dimensions of that bedroom?
24.
I couldn't read. I don't.
I'm gonna try and tell you right now.
Read the numbers.
That bedroom is 27, including the sitting area in the east-west direction, is 27 feet 8 inches. And the front to back dimension of it is, pardon me, Mr. Davis, it's 14 feet in the north-south direction.
I mean, it would require reconfiguration. I got it.
Mr. Boardman, I never.
Yes. Any other questions for Mr. Schreier? Mr. Boardman?
I appeared at the ARPB meeting and had my real say there. And on behalf of myself and the Civic Association, I would be quick to say that my first reaction upon seeing the comparison of the changed mass elevation was that there had been a mistake at the printers and that one elevation had been put on the page twice, because my reaction was there was no difference between before and after. I think, as many of you have said, it's kind of an issue of our own perception. We look at these pictures and changes or non-changes, and it just, it's beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So they do change, and I'm respectful of that, and respectful of the opinion of the ARPB. But I did not take the new unmasked provision back to the board of the Civic Association. I frankly didn't think it was changed enough to call them together to look at. But so I can't speak for them as to that change. But my overall reaction was change some. It's only 2 feet less in height. 2 feet is 7% of the height of the building. I'd be curious for our general knowledge to know about how the architect has computed the mass. I think that's something that certainly has relevance to a lot of what we're doing. So I thought it was important that when you hear about the letters, I've read them all, maybe you have too. But I think it's important to know which elevation was shown to people when they issued those letters. And it was the one with all the foliage and sort of fuzzy edges around where buildings are or are not behind the shrubbery. They did not, at least people on Polo Drive, did not see those structure-only elevations. Am I not being?
No, you're pretty clear. Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
Yeah, these are the only elevations that I have.
Just the east view elevation?
No, all 4 elevations, but with landscaping versus
I see.
version.
Whoa. Let's be very clear. You submitted the elevations that did not have landscaping on them. You gave those to people?
No, I didn't know. I said that the version that we provided everybody in their mailbox included landscaping, but it was all 4 elevations. It was not
Yeah,
east
but
elevation. Yeah.
I'm showing you the eastern elevation.
That's what they're gonna see.
What they didn't see was the non-landscape structure. And our code in the sections we are dealing with deals with structures, not structures landscaped. Now, we have separate sections that deal with landscaping. But it's important to understand they did not see the bare structural elevations of this building. In other words, they did not see this. I think it's important because, as I said to the ARPB, we're not going to build I hope we're not going to build non-complying structures and then cover them up with foliage. That shouldn't be the approach, I don't believe, in approving structural items in the town. But anyway, the real purpose I stand up for is to just set the stage, and a lot of what Paul said. We've really done something worthwhile. It's taken a lot of meetings, and we've done something very worthwhile, and it's going to have a big effect going forward. We even see drafts of some new ordinances. Pardon me, I have a voice problem. We're recognizing, and we've spent a lot of time on talking about the non-numeric aspects of structures. And that's what the Civic Association Board, starting with Old School Road example, really thinks we ought to be doing, is spending more time on the sections of the code that have sort of been, in our judgment, forgotten and not applied, the non-numeric. So what we're doing here and what's started here, no matter how you decide this particular case, is going to be very important. It's going to deal with the Polo Drive stuff. We've got, as we've said, 25 to 31 floor plan houses on lots on Polo Drive. In the next 10 to 15 to 20 years, there's going to be a lot of building. And I'm so pleased to see the recognition, and I'm going to report it to the board, of how we're now going to spend more time on that sort of thing and more time on some of these ordinances like the similarity ordinance, I guess that you're working on. And I'm really rise to thank you for that. And let's continue it. And let's continue the processes at the town hall. I think what Mr. Davis said, his frustration, I understand that frustration. So we've got to try and figure out ways to take these issues and bring them up sooner in the process so that it doesn't have someone go all the way through. All this is perfectly proper, but we can try and do a better job of having these things come up early. And so I thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Flood. Mr. Davis? Appreciate all the time. And I'll be really quick. I just wanted to say 2 things. One, we did provide the elevations in good faith with what we thought the neighbors would see. They don't care about the code and whether it's structures or landscaping. They care about what they're going to see. And we got overwhelming support. I didn't provide the map here today. Hopefully you saw it, but the neighbors to the direct north, the direct east, to the direct south. And this was not a broad-based solicitation. So even like a Joan, for example, who lives on the cove, I didn't go ask her for a letter. There are others on your same, Palm Way that I did not go ask. Everybody that I asked, of course, these look great. And so I just want to make sure that you understand that in good faith, we provided what I had with what they would see and didn't, did we bring the blueprints or this or that or whatever? We provided in good faith what we thought people cared about and would see and received overwhelming support. I have no doubt about that. And certainly relative to what's currently there with the green chain link fence, dock that's falling in the water, rebar through the seawall, in a house that used to be peach color. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this is a compliant home. This is a compliant home by the FARs, by the rules, the regulations, and we have gone and spent time designing a home, not kind of covered up with landscaping, but designing a home according to that rule set. Subjective opinions are subjective opinions, but it is a compliant, conforming home that meets the special exception for prong criteria, and that's where we are. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from the public? Any comments from the commission?
Well, I think one of the complications of the whole issue is that it did meet the code and went through staff and things when it came to us, and that complicates
Certainly did.
the whole situation.
And it's a frustration that we all understand that you went through. And as Mr. Boardman said, this brings focus to what really is important to this town and how things might be addressed earlier on so that you aren't inconvenienced, but through the expense and the difficulty that has been presented by 5 meetings.
And I'd just like to add that in terms of the process, we did go back to the APRB. We did present the points about the 4 items for the special exception, and all the members of the meeting voted that they felt it met the four criteria. And I know you're a separate body that takes advice from them, but that's now 2 times that they've voted, all who are present, in favor of it. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay, and I think we should call it for a vote unless you want to have another meeting. No. All right, who wants to proceed?
Hang on a second, I'm old school. Easier to flip pages. I'm on these motions. There's several. Obviously, they're made motions and written in the affirmative here, so.
Yeah.
The first motion for this application is a motion to approve a demolition permit to remove the existing structures on the property except for the existing entry wall pier feature at the entrance.
Second that.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes,
Commissioner Orthwein?
Yes.
Mayor Morgan?
I'm sorry. Yes.
Oh, yes. Did I say yes? I was thinking yes. I was reading. Sorry.
The second motion is motion to approve a special exception to reduce the rear setback from 50 feet to 35 feet as per section 70-75J, rear setbacks for waterfront lots in the core district.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
yes,
Commissioner Orthwein?
Yes, with some reservations. But I'm supporting the Architecture Review Board, and I think that's important for us too.
Mayor Morgan?
No.
Third motion is motion to approve a level 3 architectural site plan based on a finding that the construction of a 8,699 square foot Anglo-Caribbean 2-story single-family dwelling with a 2.5 car garage and swimming pool meets the minimum intent of the design manual and applicable review standards with the following condition. Any minor modifications to the approved landscaping shall be submitted to the town manager for review and approval, and any major modifications shall be brought back to the ARPB for review and approval prior to the commencement of landscaping.
Is there a second?
A second.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
yes,
Commissioner Orthwein?
Yes.
Mayor Morgan?
No. Thank you very much. Sorry for the length of time this all took, but I think it was very helpful to the town. Clarify some issues, so thank you again. All right. Let's move on then to ordinance 22/1. Mr. Nazaro.
Thank you, Mayor. At last month's meeting, we talked a little bit about some ordinances that we wanted direction on. The first one, 22/1, is presented for your review and approval. It adjusts the level 1 and level 2 site plan architecture review levels to modify a previous allowance for the town manager to approve without the ARPB, without a hearing by the ARPB, changes that would be significantly different in color, texture, appearance than existing materials. So we wanted to make sure that applicants that came through did not feel like they could make a significant change to their home without having a hearing before the ARPB. And we also adjusted to include applications that included the North Ocean Boulevard Overlay District to get level 2 ARPB approval as well, given that that is a significant feature of Gulfstream, that corridor as you drive down A1A. So we wanted the ARPB to be able to review those applications as well. So that's presented for your review.
Any questions? Understand the point of the ordinance? Okay, very good. Ms. Taylor?
Ordinance number 22/1. An ordinance of the Town Commission of the Town of Gulfstream, Palm Beach County, Florida, amending the Town Code of Ordinances at Chapter 66 zoning, Article 5 site plans, Division 2 architectural site plan review, levels 1, 2, and 3, Section 66-141 applicability to require applications within the 50-foot North Ocean Boulevard Overlay District and projects that make certain changes which are significantly different to receive level 2 architectural site plan review, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict, providing for codification, and providing an effective date and for other purposes. Being presented this 11th day of February 2022 on first reading.
Thank you. Ordinance number 22/1 has been presented to us on first reading. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve ordinance number 22/1.
Second.
Second.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwein?
Yes.
Mayor Morgan?
Yes. Next is ordinance 22/2. Mr. Nazaro.
Thank you, Mayor. So ordinance 22/2 relates to dissimilar structures that are going for approval. It addresses specific criteria that cannot be too dissimilar to homes within a 250-foot radius, and that includes height of building or height of roof and architectural compatibility and some other features. This is something that was taken from the town of Palm Beach. We already have, as you can see, a regulation prohibiting excessively similar structures that was identical to the town of Palm Beach code. Obviously, Skip Randolph is the town attorney for both Palm Beach and Gulfstream. So I imagine that was a carryover from that municipality. And we're just adding something that prohibits excessively dissimilar structures. So we don't have the sort of impact that I think Mr. Lyons was addressing earlier on during that application for Polo, where we have very dissimilar heights and very different structures. So this is a way to sort of compare the streetscape as you're driving by and ensure that we maintain the character on a sort of micro level, as opposed to just from a district-wide standard. So this is just sort of to shore up that on a sort of much smaller level.
This gives discretion to the ARPB and the commission. For example, with the application we just had, they're lowering the roof height. But now with the finished floor elevation requirements, it's going right back up probably a couple feet, and in some cases more than that. And so even though roof heights may be lowered, it's still going to be significantly high as you drive by. And I guess this ordinance allows us to review all of that, not just the numeric code number.
That's correct. So for example, we would be able to ask an applicant to submit elevations of the neighboring houses by comparison, including what would happen with an increase in the finished floor elevation if that's new construction. And that would be a certainly subjective call, but you would be able to compare them and take some of the steps maybe that we got to after 3 or 4 public meetings, maybe at an earlier meeting, like an initial meeting of the ARPB, or just a meeting with town staff and seeing what that's going to do to the streetscape. So that was, that was why we sort of suggested that from a staff
Very
level.
good. Okay, this question. So, and I know I get hung up on my house, but it's the proximity of it makes it easy for me. But if I look at the series of houses, on much of Polo, certainly down towards the south end, the houses were positioned where they were sort of from front to back in the center, and someplace in the code it's described as houses having open backyards with pools. So if somebody was to want to build a 2-story house and they wanted to push that back, that doesn't fit with the general topology, the arrangement of homes there. Would that be inconsistent? What would
I mean, that would be a.
well, maybe I'm getting off subject. Is that
No, you're not.
No.
It's appearance of mass from the
No.
street.
Yeah.
You're talking about, for example, the backyard.
Yeah.
Or the side view or something like that.
There is a section of the code that talks about individual homeowners' enjoyment and right to use the property without blah, blah, blah. And it clearly says that, if a house is going to interfere with your enjoyment, and this is my terminology, but it's something like that in the code. So I guess in a different section of the code, you appreciate what section I'm referring to?
I'm not sure.
There's a section of the code that says how you should apply the design manual. And so that as we make a decision for a decision-making process, because you get a set of guidelines and then you have to apply it. So it talks about if your decision is going to hurt your neighbor, that's a problem. I mean, that's the executive summary in the application of our decision-making in the code. So, I mean, I guess you could fall on that as a reason why that would be
dissimilar.
Yeah, or it would. Another reason to turn down the subject from separate from this.
There are a number of things in the code that respect the property or the privacy rather rights of neighbors. Just one thing that comes to mind, I know that we're talking a little bit about screening at the earlier meeting, but that is something that is a requirement for certain 2-story structures. So if you have a 2nd-story elevation, looking over into someone's backyard or a pool, something that's set very far back, the code realizes that there needs to be some privacy that's protected. And in addressing small landscaping changes throughout the town, on site with the town manager, if someone is removing some of that landscaping, he absolutely makes sure that it's going to be replaced with something that's equal that continues to maintain that privacy. So. And I know this is architecture versus.
So I don't do that. I just think at some point we need to address the real practical question. Higher 2-story buildings. Yes, you put up landscaping, and now you're in a deep canyon between 2 houses. That's not a good outcome, in my opinion. Further, the streetscape would look awful. So maybe this is attacking, but I think that, I guess it's just the first step.
This is a baby step.
Okay.
We're going to be bringing to the commission other ideas to talk about.
And I'm sure Mr. Boardman and others in the Civic Association have some ideas too, right?
I'm sure, and we're open to all sorts of ideas, as well as other municipalities that are addressing this. So we want to prevent what happened here with the Davises. We want guidance given to staff early on with harder numbers and more direct guidance in the code so that these things get prepared properly at the initial stage before it gets up to the ARPB.
And of course, something that we can't dismiss are the new FEMA rules, which is, directly, impacted you. And that's going to happen all the way down Polo or further north on Polo with all these one-story homes.
They're going to get higher, right? 'Cause it's
That's
lower.
correct.
I think it's the biggest issue we face is the roof height of two-story homes.
Right.
And I think we need to look at that number because of the requirements by FEMA. The 18-inch drop by the Davis house is going to mean nothing because it's going up, I think, 18 inches or 24 inches. So we need to address that because particularly in the core on Polo, you're going to have some homes looming down on other older, smaller homes.
I share with town manager of the Southampton Press that addressed cars being stolen, blowers, and height of buildings because of FEMA, literally.
Just like Gulf Street.
And so I said I'd do this, and I will do it. I have a name of a person. That guy was just calling me sent me the name of the person in the village hall of Southampton. Well, he can tell you what they're proposing, and their commission, in their case, trustees, will be reviewing the next month. Let's just see what they, just one point of view.
Absolutely.
But his example is the best we have going now. So if anybody wants to drive by his house and the neighbor's house, which is now applied all the new FEMA rules, and it's one story.
So it works great.
Right.
And I will say, it's a collaborative process where the landscaper on the urging of the homeowner came to us and said, do you want us to put up these taller leakers that would go up 30 feet? And south side of our house is where the master bedroom is. We don't want it up. We want the sun. So they said, fine, we don't need to put up. They thought we wanted it high. And it was only one story, so that was easy to solve. But I like the collaboration.
How nice of them to work with you on that. Not just
And Seaside did the same thing with
The other two houses on
what's
A1A.
his name?
Oh, yeah, 35.
Yeah.
The guy with the white post.
Yeah.
Bob Burns. Is it Bob?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he had the same, but he wanted, but that was the north side. He wanted it higher, so they did it higher for him. And so I hope that's a process that happens a lot. I'm talking too much. I'm going to say no more.
But anyways, this is an initial step. I think it's a nice addition to the code. Gives us a little more flexibility and discretion and guidance. So, Ms. Taylor, would you read 22/2?
Certainly. An ordinance of the Town Commission, Town of Gulfstream, Palm Beach County, Florida, amending the Town Code of Ordinances at Chapter 66 Zone, Article 5, Site Plans, Division 2 Architectural Site Plan Review, Levels 1, 2, and 3, Section 66-144 Standards, to include standards for Level 2 and 3 Architectural Site Plan Review, which prohibit excessively dissimilar structures, providing for severability, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict, providing for codification, providing an effective date, and for other purposes, being presented on first reading this 11th day of February 2022.
Thank you. Ordinance 22/2 has been read for us. The first reading. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve ordinance number 22/2.
Second?
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Roitwine?
Yes.
Mayor Morgan?
Yes. Thank you. Town manager, underground.
Yes, sir. Okay, so we have 4 items here. I'm trying not to be verbose about them. 3 of them really relate to landscaping, vegetative management in terms of debris removal. But on the utility undergrounding, this is a very good news. I mean, all individual cutovers have been completed by Comcast. And so what happens next is that on February 23rd, they will perform what they call a scheduled maintenance of plant. And they've already had 2, and those happen in the middle of the night because they shut everybody down while they convert everything from above ground to underground. And so that's everything on A1A from Gulf View up to Little Club. And so when they perform that, then they will finish their wrecking of their current facilities just on A1A. That's all that's left there, County Road and Little Club. And so, as I've told you every month, I'm staying in front of FP&L, so they'll be ready to step in when they're done. And you can already see that they've already started, basically. So the first thing they're doing is putting in the new street lights on A1A. That's why you're having traffic issues out there. And so they're doing that. They should be done with that probably by the end of next week. And then with another contractor, they're going to begin in the core area, starting at Gulf View, moving north, taking down the poles.
Can we start a poll? I'm kidding.
Well, I mean, they're just, yeah, both Gulfstream Road and Polo. So, and so the timing of all this should work out. You know, we'll keep our fingers crossed, but we're working with Comcast and FP&L. They're now talking to each other, and so so we have a plan to begin to take these poles down.
Do you have a date?
In the core on the road, there's some spray paint.
Is there a date?
Markings. Is that relative to FP&L, or is that with our engineering?
No, all these painted spots, those are the Baxter and Woodman have begun with their surveying for our next big CIP project. So that's all related to that. Now the next 3 are kind of related to landscaping. This is an update on the gas-powered leaf blowers. We've contacted all the lawn maintenance companies in Gulfstream. None of them admitted to having to use battery-powered equipment in other towns and cities. I'm not sure that they're telling us the truth or not, but they say, at least the ones that we've contacted here, say that they haven't had to do that. Our neighboring cities do not require battery-powered blowers. Ocean Ridge says they do try to enforce the noise with decibel readings. I'm not sure how successful they are in doing that. I would not recommend that we rely on doing that. Of course, we did reach out to our residents, both in the core and at Place au Soleil. The results came in Place au Soleil were a little ambivalent to the.
I have some more responses.
Oh, okay.
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 Responses from Jonathan Johnson, who owns 3 homes there.
Right.
And he was quite strongly opposed to switching to electric. And also for Nicola Johnson, I guess that's his cousin. So he said 4 votes against. And Chet Snavely said that the PAS board is strongly opposed to switching also. And they both brought up the fact that the landscapers were using other tools that are gas powered, with hedge trimmers and electric saws to cut down trees. So they felt that it wasn't a good choice.
And I don't see Mr. Roach here, but they did do a survey in the core area, and I think it was heavily in favor of making the switch. So I think we've done the research that we need to do. I don't believe trying to control that noise with the decibel readings is the way we should go. I mean, it's difficult to do. You actually have to have somebody trained to use the the equipment. And so are they going to be out there every day of the week? And that's, that's their sole job is to use the decibel reader.
All right, so we've analyzed this thing.
I think we have, so I think it's just a decision to either direct
To
it.
make a decision on how we want to move forward.
Could the decision be made like for different districts, different decisions? Like
That's my question.
with more density, like the core that I could see their issue?
I mean, if there's some interest in that, I just have to look into it to make sure that we're okay with doing that. I don't know.
The code enforcement issue though, then that means you're applying the rule. I mean, I guess if it's applies to the whole town and it's drafted that way, then you can't selectively enforce, but a little bit nebulous if it's drafted where it's for this, area versus that.
We divide the town into districts and we have rules for the different districts.
But this is, you're gonna have to enforce what the Ocean House versus the Core House versus this house. The enforcement of this whole thing is what I have a problem with. How are we going to enforce it? Are we gonna hire another person on staff to enforce gas blowers or electric blowers? I mean, it's just questions, that's all.
Yeah, well, if that's
And I don't want people turning each other in. I think that's a really negative thing. I really do, especially one yard company against another, like ratting each other out. I think that's really negative.
Well, in talking with the town of Palm Beach, which does prohibit them, and I think they just recently expanded the prohibition to all, it was square footage of the lots. So they did separate it out by doing, below a certain square footage of the lot, they could still use the gas. But they went on to make it apply to all of the sizes of the lots just recently. But when talking to them, they did say they do have people ratting out other companies, almost doing self, enforcement.
Yeah, I just think that's a really negative it just sounds ugly for lawn companies to start ratting each other out. It's only my opinion.
No, it's a good point.
I mean, it'd be like me ratting my neighbor out because I had someone painting the outside of their house after hours or doing, I mean, I don't know. I think it's a negative effect.
The other point is what Don said, with the hedge trimmers and the lawnmowers, it's still gas.
I don't know, how much we're accomplishing. I don't think it's worth our money to hire another person to enforce it. I mean, I don't believe, I'd rather hire another policeman. So I just don't think we should be hiring people to enforce gas or leaf blowers. I mean, that's just too green for me.
So the question is, do we leave it the way it is, or do we direct town attorney to draft an ordinance? What's your feeling?
I think it's gotta be for everybody.
I agree with that. It's not practical. You got, way Bob comes here and he goes over.
That's right.
These guys gonna be.
I even
So if it's
think
across the
neighboring,
entire town, or we leave it the way it is.
Right.
yeah, I even think neighboring towns, like people go to Ocean Ridge, Gulfstream, Delray. I mean, that's gonna be really hard for I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but I'm just saying it's until everyone's ready to make a unified decision to go green with these electric.
Well, the town manager in Gulfstream is our code enforcement officer.
New job for
Right.
you.
I would not like to go from district to district. I mean, I'd spend all my time trying to enforce that. It'd be much easier to do if it's town-wide, electric
Right.
versus gas, obviously, and Mr. Anthony here helps me quite a bit in code enforcement because he's out there in the streets more often than I am. And so he could pick these people off in a matter of minutes. But
And I'd like to add something if I can. I did speak to Delray Guard in particular because they reached out to me in regards to this new code that if it was going to take place. He immediately told me that if that was going to happen for him, he would have to drop a lot of customers that he had in the town. because it's very expensive. One blower is about $1,000.
Oh, wow.
And then on top of that, the batteries that you would have to have only run 2-hour times. Who can do that? You'd have to sit 2 hours waiting for it to charge.
Or buy more batteries,
It's-
which are
it's-
$400 or
I have to purchase more
$500.
batteries, and the batteries in between $200 and $400, depending on where you get them and what type of, equipment you buy. But I mean, it can end up adding up to being close to $1,500 to $1,600 just for one blower to have it run 4 hours in 1 day. So
I know what the solution
he
is.
strongly suggested that if it did happen, that he was gonna pull out, because he has to buy them for all his trucks.
I
And he
get,
has a lot of fleet that he takes care of costing, so.
I get rid of all the blowers and let them rake rather than having my guy blow it to the neighbor, and then his guy comes, he blows it over my, and it's the whole process. It's crazy. I drive down A1A in my car, I'm thinking, well, that guy's not gonna blow on my car, is he?
Right after you've been to rub it
So
up?
I think we just, table it this way. I don't think we're making much progress, but other towns have gone through it and it's worked successfully. Again, I reference villages, Southampton, because I lived there in the summer, but they had all the same concerns that happened, it's done. It's, you remember now. And Palm Beach did it, right?
Correct.
Well, we probably should table it again, considering we had overwhelming non-support from Plaza Soleil.
Right.
See, which we were not expecting, because we had minimal response, and then we went back around and everybody got together because it's after the holidays, so I get it.
It's still not, it's like, I think about 9 responses and then another 4, that's 13, and then check with the board.
Right.
So
It's still small.
still small, but it now tips, before it was even, now it tips towards not to switch.
It would be if, Ocean Ridge and others nearby started to migrate that way. So maybe you have some discussion with, is it okay for him to speak to the town managers?
Sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely.
I've already talked to them
Yeah.
for that reason. I was in favor of doing this until today. And then the Plaza Soleil's voice, and then, I really hadn't even thought about all the other equipment that's gas, fired. And we're so small to put more on the town manager's plate and the police. The police are the ones who get a lot of the calls, and Anthony. I mean, we've got a small staff here and they're busy as it is. So
When you reach out and ask people if they want to switch, like lawns and gardens, that like it's going to cost people. I think people have to know what it's going to cost too, or have everybody switch, all the towns at one time. I agree with you, Scott.
yeah, certainly the
They all have-
we got to have a number of towns in on this. Seems
Yeah.
to me to make it worthwhile financially. What Anthony said was very persuasive.
People aren't going to be happy when they lose their lawn service.
Either lose it or see a doubling in the price.
Yeah.
If they decide to do that, but I don't think they would. I think they just would. We're not big enough. They would just leave.
Yeah. A lot of rakes on sale at the hardware store.
We could just.
Ray, do you use a blower or do you rake?
I do both.
You wake up when you collect, right? You don't put it on your neighbor's lawn, do you?
No, I
No,
don't.
don't answer that.
I don't.
All right, so I think we're in agreement to table that. Yes.
Okay.
Let's move on.
Okay, the next one is year-round Saturday work restrictions. Our codes do not allow landscape maintenance people to work on Saturdays during the season, just like all the other regulated construction activities. But there was a question posed as to whether the commission might be, if there was any sentiment to allow the landscape maintenance people to work on Saturdays year round.
Allow?
To extend.
It's
prohibition
extended,
here.
or,
Because they can do it 6 months of the year right now.
well, yeah, they cannot work the
Yeah,
5 months of
5
the,
months, yeah.
Extended probation for the whole year.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we received feedback from neighbors who are here year round. Why are we second-class citizens? That's my term, not theirs. And so why shouldn't they have the same benefit? Why do they have to have their mornings and stroll. So I
In the
think we
summertime.
should. I don't know why we have a distinction, frankly.
And more and more families coming in, they're year round.
Right.
And frankly, the landscaping companies for those 5 months can't do it on Saturday or Sunday. So they're already scheduled during the week. So it seemed natural to me to extend it year round.
My guy comes on Thursday all year, so I'm good.
So,
Yes,
The
Tom.
trouble is, in the summer, I live in a jungle, as you know, just from neighbors. Some of that extensive landscaping that's done in the summer, I don't mean mowing, the regular
Right.
maintenance, but they do extensive work sometimes in the summer. And it's the only day they can really slip that into the regular programs, when they're cutting back, they're there at my house for 3 days and you do the same thing. And I don't know if they can squeeze that into the regular week. I don't think they mind not being able to do it in the winter because no one's going to do it in the winter time, but in the summer and in the fall before the seasonal people come back, they do a lot of extensive pruning, cutting, heavy landscaping. I think maybe they use Saturdays to do that. That'd be my only comment is you say, why can't they do it now? But they delay all that from the winter and have an extra day in those off months. Maybe you could restrict it to July, August, and September or something, but there is a time when they need more time for big projects. That's the only
And
comment.
I agree with you.
Or carve out the big projects. That's not what we're trying to address.
Okay, well, yeah, okay, you could carve out the big projects, that would be fine too. Maybe they have to get a permit. from
Don't they
the town
have to-
do it, Something.
If you're doing tree trimming and whatnot, do they have to call in to town?
no, I mean,
Not trimming.
it's not trimming, but
Removal.
when they start removing
Right.
trees, that's when
Right.
we have to.
You're talking about what we all do, which is
So hurricane pruning.
cutting, pruning for storms and whatnot. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that's something different than we're trying to address here. We're just talking about regular landscaping,
Yeah,
lawn
right.
maintenance. Maybe that's the way to do it.
Well, I think Tom raised a good point. I mean, as a practical matter, if they need the Saturday, so be it. Just leave it alone. Just-
Right, who's gonna say anything about it? Because it's really mostly in the Ocean West District area.
Well, I guarantee you, if we prohibit it, somebody's going to call us, say, well, I thought you guys changed that, these. So somebody will call us and probably call the police over the weekend.
Why are you, I mean, it's not broken. Why are we bringing it? What causes you to bring it up?
So there's been discussions by the commission periodically over the years about the prevalence of our year-round residents and what we're doing, whether or not we extend the season, we get rid of the season, sort of how we address that. So this was kind of just like an initial jumping off point, maybe to even talk about that and what the commission wants to do. So right now, during the season, you can do certain construction activities, but they have to be in a fully enclosed structure. So essentially during the season, on Saturday. So during the season, we are kind of slowing down construction, but not significantly because they can still do certain work and they're aware of that. We wouldn't want to, just like our chairman mentioned, maybe necessarily prohibit everything because there are certain maybe landscaping activities that they want to do, just like we wouldn't want to prohibit any construction activities year round because then that draws out our construction projects, which we want to incentivize to get done sooner. So those are all the kind of thoughts behind whether we extend the season, get rid of the season, or regulate the seasonal, non-seasonal in some different way. So we're just kind of, this is a jumping off point to maybe have a bigger discussion about those regulations.
But I'll also add, our ordinance does allow, here we go with special exceptions again, for people to do limited work that is defined as being prohibited during the season, but pumping concrete instead of pouring it through the chute. You can't do that, but as you know, because you've seen them, they come to me and the ordinance allows this to come in if they've got to pour for 4 hours to keep the construction site going and they can't go beyond that unless they make this pour. Well, carefully, we're not here to stop necessarily their construction. And so I do that, and you know that. I mean, they'll come in and get a special exception to pour through with a pump for 4 hours or maybe a day. And that's one day. And I rarely get any complaints about people doing the type of work that's prohibited for a short period of time.
I agree with that. I think I give you credit for that because it keeps the construction projects
Right.
going. I think people would rather see it done
That's right.
than be bothered by fences, green tarp, and stuff. To have it done, landscape up like next to you, Paul, it looks great. I mean, we could have dragged that out another year.
Yeah, I mean, and even the
Well, I know
Saturday.
he gave him all kinds of exceptions.
So even the Saturday work, 3377 up here, a March project called, they wanted to do some painting outdoors and something else with pavers that was not going to make any dust or noise, and they needed to do it on Saturday. And I said, sure, we'll let you do that. It wasn't indoors, it was outdoors, but it was not going to make any noise. And the caveat to it was if we got any complaints about it, then you'd have to stop the work. So I do give special exceptions, and maybe that's something, giving a special exception if somebody needed to come in and do some major trimming, preparing for the hurricane season.
And that's absolutely.
Complicated. I just leave it as is.
How many people actually need to have summer weekend landscaping work? Lawn maintenance. Because everybody's signed up during the season. It's got to be during the week. Don't they just keep that day?
I would.
So how
Well,
many
Mayor,
people?
I mean, I want to chime in on this because I do it on the side as well, so. And I'm listening to you guys talk about it, but you have to take into consideration that there are days that a landscaper tries to go out to work, and if it's raining, it's not good for their equipment to get wet while they work. Plus, it's not good for the turf either to get cut while it's soaking wet. So they will have to push that day back to the next day, so then it prolongs it, and then sometimes it rains 2 or 3 days back to back, and they can't do anything. So, I mean, for you to take that Saturday away from them would be unjustifiable for them to be able to finish doing their job. That they want to do. So
Let's leave it the way it is.
Okay, so is that good?
That answers that.
Okay. Now, the final one is our vegetative debris removal regulations. Right now, we really don't have those in place. We do have one that is not codified that prohibits residents from, well, actually, it allows residents to put vegetative material out, and they can actually leave it for an entire week. And I don't think that's what we want to do. Our goal here is to codify the prohibition of putting vegetative material out anytime other than 24 hours before our vegetative pickup day or our bulk day, which is Wednesday. So that would mean they could only put it out on Tuesday morning. Now, the other thing that we've talked about many times, we have this problem all the time. We have people come Thursday and may have a big cut, and they've got their vegetative material out that stretches the length of their front yard. And so it potentially will sit out there for a week until, the claw truck comes the next Wednesday. So we're suggesting that we would require all the landscape companies to take away any of their cuttings whenever they do them.
Yeah, I mean, I've never understood what Delray Garden Center, we should call him Delray Garden Center, comes, he cuts, and then he just takes it. And that's his responsibility. I paid for that, and based on his fee.
And I'll say probably 80% of the contractors do that, but we have, I mean, it's not just random. We have some regular, habitual offenders.
We have people that bring in their own lawn people, like across the street from me. I mean, and he cuts it when he can, and it just sits there until it gets picked up.
Right.
I mean, so it's an individual person they've hired. It's not a lawn service.
I've
Right.
spoken to him like 4 times already.
Yeah, and there's a drain where he puts everything too,
Right.
and it stops. No, and all of a sudden you have water up in the street like this. And then unfortunately you call the town hall and say, can you help me? But it's an individual person cutting the lawn that they've hired individually. And that person's unregulated. I mean, he could come Saturday, Sunday, he can come anytime he wants.
Well, he can't do it on Sunday.
Really?
Right.
Okay. Because
Or Saturday.
he can, yeah, he
In the
comes.
season, right.
He
So,
works full-time other places.
Shouldn't be the responsibility of the homeowner. If they cut it, they have to remove it. I don't care how they do it, that's their business.
Yeah.
But why should you have to live with their cuttings for 3 or 4 days? I mean, that to me is, and you know, we spend all this time on the architectural review and all that, and then we dump our garbage in front of our properties. I mean, that makes no sense.
right.
What do you propose?
Well, I mean, we're proposing to require all landscape maintenance companies to take their debris and vegetative waste off when they,
Well, then how do you deal with this individual?
That's their problem.
He has
Find
to
the
take,
homeowner.
okay. So tell the homeowner he has to take it away.
So there would
Because he's
be,
not a company, so to speak.
right, so there'd be a two-pronged approach to what Mr. Dunham's saying. The first one is requiring landscape companies or individuals who are hired to remove it themselves. The second one would be not allowing you to put it out except for 24 hours prior to pickup. So you have that entire day. So that individual, perhaps if they were coming just that one specific day, could technically put it out as they were maybe the homeowner, and we could try to figure out how to manage that. But in the end, if they put it out on a Friday and it was going to be there all weekend, we would either fine the homeowner for failing to adhere to our guideline prohibiting putting it out
Okay.
only 24 hours before. And if we can find the individual and prove that they actually did that work, then we could find them as well. So that would be how we would address
I've
it.
been leaving my owner-derived clippings on the side of my garage or behind the hedge for 12 years.
Yeah.
And then we put them out.
Right.
Sometimes if I'm in a hurry, I don't do it as much as I used to when I was younger, but we would, you know, sometimes you put it out Monday night. I'm like, oh my God, I don't have time Tuesday night. But like, we've been doing that for years.
right.
For
So,
people that would do some of it yourself.
yeah, so as Mr. Nazaro said, a lot of people, you know, I mean, they're palm trees, you know.
Yeah, the problem
You have to pick up
You put 'em
these
behind
things
the
during
hedge,
the
hopefully
week.
you don't kill the
And
grass.
so
Or put it out
part of this
Tuesday
would be
night.
that the resident can pick, you know, they can do their own trimming and clean up their yard, but they have to do it so it can't be seen from the street and put it out on Tuesday morning for, you know, 24 hours before it's picked up on Wednesday.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay,
So we're going to direct
yes.
the town attorney to come up with an ordinance that
How are you
That
going to
addresses that?
homeowners of that?
Yes, sir.
advise them.
Just when they make a mistake, they send them.
Oh, well, I mean, look,
I know when
we don't-
Class A sees stuff.
yeah, well, there are warnings and there's a process you go through to remind people that,
This is just technical. If there's if there's a big storm or a tropical storm, hurricane, these rules are obsolete because people have to pick up their stuff and try to get it. So I mean, I just want to clarify that.
yes,
There'll be the-
and we have a company that comes in and makes the sweeps,
Yeah.
if you remember that.
Yes, oh yeah, but I'm just saying a lot of
Sure,
homeowners, I pick up my yard before anyone else does.
right.
After a tropical storm or a hurricane or.
Yeah,
Whatever.
and
You know
those
what
are
I'm saying.
different circumstances,
Yes.
and we do have companies that do come in and make 2 or 3
Oh, yeah,
sweeps.
they do, yeah. but
And so we would handle that.
This would not be enforced during those
Correct.
times.
You can add this to the letter, my letter going out too.
I know. Do you need?
Go forward with it.
This is why I really came. I want to talk about
Up here.
And Still, I don't have my hearing aids on either, so please talk up. Not kidding.
We used to have the contract negotiated with the trash haulers, that they would come back and get the recycles and so forth and the trash that's beside your house and take it out to their truck. We used to pay for that. Is that still the case?
Yes.
That's
Then
correct.
I would suggest the mayor sometime in one of his letters, make it clear to everyone that that's what we're paying for. Because you're getting a lot of trash that the owners put in trash cans and recycle out on the curb because they think they have to do that in order to have it picked up.
New residents.
We're paying for something we're not taking advantage of.
Yeah, I definitely put that. I remember when I moved here, I was doing that till.
Oh, sure. I mean, we're developing a state of the town, and we can include that. Well, there are some reminders we're putting in there about some codes that need to be.
Get lengthy now.
Don't let it go.
People typically don't read
Don't let it
past
go
the
to that
first or
third
second page, but, okay, so that's it. We have our direction.
Very good. Okay.
Thank you.
The marching orders. ARPB meeting will be February 24th at 8:30 a.m. Anyone who wishes to attend. Finance report.
Yes, sir. I'll be brief. The balance sheet that you have represents 1/3 of our fiscal year budget at this point in time. And I'll report that our expenses at this point in time are at 31%. And this represents 33% of our budget. So.
Any
So-
questions?
And the water report, there's nothing unusual about that.
Questions on finance? No, let's move on. Chief?
Request that the report be accepted as submitted. Just want to clarify, there is one line item on the report that says theft grant and theft automobile. We did not have another stolen car last month. This is a carryover from the car from December because it was located and the rest was made in Broward County, and there was some property and stuff recovered with it. So there was a new case number attached to that item. So it appears as though we had another car stolen, but we did.
Very good.
Maybe that's clear.
Keeping the streets safe. Thank you, Chief. Piggyback contract. Mr. Dunham or Mr. Nazaro?
This is just a piggyback with our existing information technology services provider. Our contract has expired, so we piggybacked a similar contract. We're going to be using them now. We may go out to bid in the future, but we're satisfied with their services overall, so we wanted to continue that relationship in a way that didn't require us to go out to bid again.
Any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask the commission if they noticed that our black cabinet is no longer here. All of our new, we've completed the work with our audio visual improvements, and congratulations to Rebecca and Renee for doing all this work and planning. And
Yeah, they're in here.
Big job to convert, so it's great.
it
It
is
looks so much better than this stuff being removed. So
Right.
you did a great job.
right.
Rub my lap.
Everything's working well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Everything's good.
Even our
Okay.
even our camera's working. So
See ya.
Great. Any questions on this piggyback? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the piggyback contract for Infotech Services as presented.
Second.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stanley.
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwein,
Yes.
Mayor Morgan.
Yes. Thank you all for coming. It was a long meeting, but productive, and appreciate everyone's input. Meeting.
Didn't you want to know our items?
Go on.
Make your pen hold.
I'm gonna take my pen